Okay, let's get into this. I want you to picture something for a second. Think about Japan. Famous for bullet trains, cutting-edge robotics, just super advanced tech everywhere. Now, imagine someone there, not like in a historical drama, but today, carrying this absolutely massive load, and we're talking potentially like over 300 pounds through really difficult terrain, no roads.
Yeah, that's quite an image. It really grabs you.
It does. And that image brings us to the Bokka. These are Japanese porters who, they seem like a total anachronism at first glance, right?
Definitely. From another era, almost.
So today, that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack the reality of these, frankly, incredible people. We'll look at the challenges, why they still do this, what the alternatives might be. And then there's this surprising twist, how these real-world porters actually inspired a huge video game.
Right, the Death Stranding connection, which we'll get into.
Exactly. So, yeah, we're diving into what makes this job so unbelievably hard.
Yeah.
But also, weirdly, kind of appealing for some folks.
It really starts with that number, doesn't it? That claim of 150-plus kilograms.
Over 330 pounds?
Yeah. It sounds almost superhuman. Like, how is that even possible?
My first reaction, too. Can a person actually carry that much, regularly?
And that's where the sources get interesting, adding some necessary nuance. So while maybe 150 kilos is the absolute extreme, maybe even a bit of hyperbole sometimes, a lot of accounts put the average loads closer to 70 or 80 kilograms.
Which is still, 150 to 175 pounds? That's a lot of weight.
It absolutely is. And some Bokka do train specifically to carry over 100 kilos, so 220 pounds for routes that take maybe like 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and just for perspective, we saw this note from someone with an Army background saying 90 to 100 kilos was basically the max load for even really fit people over distance.
So just hiking with 75 kilos, which is like 165 pounds,
Yeah.
that's already way up there.
Oh, definitely. Universally described as very, very heavy. No question.
So it's incredibly tough work, even if it's not always that absolute peak weight. But it makes you ask, where in Japan, this super developed country, is this kind of manual hauling still needed?
Exactly the question. And the answer seems to be really about the specific environments they work in. Despite all of Japan's infrastructure, these porters are mainly supplying remote mountain lodges, places deep inside national parks where you can't build roads.
Like impenetrable areas, basically.
Pretty much. Think of Oz National Park. It's this huge protected wetland area. It's got these long wooden walkways, sometimes up to 22 kilometers, crossing marshland. You can't drive a supply truck on that.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Boardwalks through a marsh.
Right. And the park's only open seasonally, maybe April to November. And it's properly remote, like 7 hours by train, then another 3 hours by bus just to get to an entrance from Tokyo. So really out there.
That paints a clear picture. Modern transport just can't reach these spots easily. But is this just a Japan thing, or can we see this kind of human porterage elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's definitely not unique to Japan. You find these incredible feats of human carrying capacity all over the world.
Like where?
Well, in the U.S., you've got porters supplying the Appalachian Mountain Club huts, the high mountain huts in the White Mountains.
Okay.
Then you think about the Inca Trail in Peru. Those porters are famous, carrying more than their own weight sometimes for days over high-altitude passes.
And setting up camp, too, right?
Exactly. Setting up, breaking down camp. It's incredible, over 2,500, 3,000 meters altitude. And then, of course, Everest Base Camp, Kilimanjaro. The Sherpas in the Himalayas are legendary. We even saw a mention of similar heavy loads, like 150 to 200 kilos, in Slovakia's high Tatras Mountains. So it's a global thing where terrain dictates the solution.
Wow. It really puts it in perspective. It's this ancient form of labor persisting because, well, sometimes it's the only way. Which brings us back to that question. Why not use more modern tech? Why are people still doing this in the 21st century?
It's the natural question, isn't it? Obviously, roads are out in protected areas like Oz, but what about technology? Helicopters get mentioned sometimes, and they are used.
But probably expensive for just, daily supplies.
Exactly. Not always feasible or cost-effective for regular runs. Then you think about drones.
Drones. Seems like the obvious answer today.
You'd think so, but the sources point out limitations. For the kind of weight we're talking, 100, 200 kilos, the drones get really expensive, like $50,000 to $250,000 startup cost.
Whoa, okay.
And their range, especially with heavy loads, is still pretty limited. It really highlights that last mile problem. For certain tricky situations, complex terrain, sometimes humans are still the most flexible, maybe even cost-effective option.
So the tech's just not quite there yet for this specific heavy-duty remote terrain niche. But what about simpler things, like pack animals, donkeys, mules? You mentioned their use elsewhere. Why not in these Japanese parks?
That's a really sharp question. The sources sort of hint that maybe the terrain itself, those narrow wooden walkways and O's, for instance, maybe they just aren't suitable for animals.
Could be. Or maybe regulations?
Could be regulations in protected areas, too. And yeah, we thought about other stuff, ATVs, quad bikes, even push carts or bikes with trailers. The fact that Bokka are still the primary method suggests these other things are either impractical because of the terrain or not allowed. It's that specific mix of factors.
Right. It always comes down to the unique local conditions, environment, rules, economics.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the people doing it. The Bokka themselves. This must take an insane physical toll.
Oh, absolutely. These aren't just strong people. They specifically train for this. It's a profession. And the physical cost is huge. Constant risk of injury rolling an ankle on that uneven ground could be disastrous out there.
Yeah, really dangerous.
The long-term impact on knees, joints, and something that really stood out from pictures, their packs often look traditional, like maybe lacking modern hip belts to distribute the weight or heavy-duty trekking poles. A lot of weight seems to be directly on the shoulders.
Oof, that sounds incredibly painful. Brutal, really.
Yeah.
And yet, the sources also mention this unexpected side, that for some, it's actually a dream job. How does that work?
Yeah,
It sounds so counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But paradoxically, yeah, there's this allure for some people. Think about it. You spend your whole day walking in absolutely stunning natural beauty.
True. No office cubicle.
No meetings, no corporate emails, none of that. You stay incredibly fit, obviously. You see amazing sights every day, meet people in these really remote, interesting places.
I guess it taps into something primal, like physical challenge being outdoors.
Exactly. Mastery over your body, the environment, a kind of autonomy you don't get in many modern jobs. It's definitely a stark contrast to how sedentary most of our lives have become.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that appeal now. Trading the spreadsheet for a mountain path. Even with the immense physical cost, there's something there. And this is where the story takes that really unexpected turn, right, into pop culture. Because the reason many people might even recognize the term Bokka today is because of a video game.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. The comment sections on the articles we looked at were just flooded with references to Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding.
Right. And what was the reaction? Did people know Bokka were real?
It seemed to spark this whole debate. Some gamers were like, oh, I thought Kojima just made that up. Maybe felt a little let down.
Like the magic was gone.
Sort of.
Yeah.
But the stronger argument, and I think the more interesting one, was the opposite. That finding out it's based on reality actually makes the game cooler. It adds depth. It's inspiration, not a ripoff.
That feels very Kojima, doesn't it? He's known for finding these real-world nuggets, these obscure facts or phenomena, and then spinning them into his own unique, often bizarre creations.
Absolutely. He does it all the time. You see this pattern across creative works, like in Death Stranding, those little floating things you eat, the cryptobiotes, based directly on real microscopic animals called tardigrades or water bears. They're famous for being almost indestructible, surviving extreme conditions.
No way. Okay, that's cool.
Or think about The Last of Us, the whole premise, the fungal infection.
That's based on something real, too.
Yeah, cordyceps fungi. They actually infect insects in real life, control their behavior. Thankfully not humans, like in the game.
Wow. Okay. That's unsettlingly real.
Right, even Pokemon. The game's geography is basically Japan. Creatures like Caterpie are just, caterpillars. Some names, too, like Eakins being snake backwards, Arbok being cobra. People thought those were just made up initially.
Huh. Never thought about that.
And Kojima's Metal Gear Solid is full of influences from movies. Terminator, Escape from New York, Blade Runner. Even something like Harry Potter, the whole house system is based on real English boarding school traditions. Reality is often the best source material.
It really is incredible how much fantasy is built on these real foundations. So, connecting it back directly to Death Stranding and the Bokka, how clear is that link in the game itself?
Oh, it's unmistakable. The absolute core of the game is you, the player, delivering heavy packages to isolated communities across this broken, difficult landscape. That's the main loop.
Literally being a futuristic Bokka.
Pretty much. And in the sequel, Death Stranding 2, They lean into it even more. There's actually a character called the Bokka, and you can unlock equipment called the Bokka exoskeleton specifically to help you carry more weight.
Wow, okay, so it's explicit?
Totally explicit. The gameplay is all about figuring out routes, managing your balance with these huge loads you fall over a lot, collecting resources, building things like bridges or zip lines to make future deliveries easier. It's all there.
And that phrase from the game, keep on keeping on.
Exactly. That really captures the relentless spirit, that perseverance you imagine the real Bokka must have. The game wraps it all in this very unique, sometimes very weird Kojima narrative,
Yeah.
but the physical act of carrying, of connecting, that's central. It becomes a metaphor for overcoming isolation.
What an amazing connection. We went from these real-world Japanese porters doing this incredibly tough job
Yeah.
all the way to inspiring a major global video game phenomenon.
Yeah.
It really shows that interplay, doesn't it? Human endurance, tradition, modern challenges.
Yeah, and zooming out, this whole deep dive, it really highlights how even in our super high-tech world, some human roles just persist. Because of specific conditions, geography, regulations, it challenges that idea that tech always has the better answer for everything. And it just beautifully shows how reality, even the seemingly niche or old-fashioned parts of it, keeps feeding creativity. It's this deep well for inspiration.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you listening out there. As technology keeps advancing and we simulate things like carrying heavy loads over tough terrain in games like Death Stranding, what do you think we gain, or maybe what do we lose, when we abstract these really ancient, really physical kinds of labor further and further away from our everyday lives?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Keep on keeping on, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.